One mistake that haunted you for life? Frank did, and it cost him everything. Now, decades later, he's getting a second chance, but the real story hasn't even started yet. You won't want to miss this. Dear listeners, before we move forward, please subscribe my channel to hit 1,000 figure. Frank Horrigan had been carrying a ghost for 30 years. To the world, he was just another aging Secret Service agent, suit pressed, earpiece in, always scanning. But beneath that calm, stoic face was a man who'd failed once, badly. He was there the day President Kennedy was shot, right there, and he couldn't stop it. No matter how many drills he did, how many missions he ran afterward, the guilt clung to him like a second skin. He didn't talk about it. Not to colleagues, not to therapists, definitely not to rookies who thought he was some kind of legend. But the truth? That moment, that shot, broke something in him. Most people carry some kind of regret, a decision they wish they'd made differently. A moment they replay in their head, always wondering, what if? For Frank, it was worse. His regret had a name, a date, and a Zapruder film to replay the failure on loop. And now, decades later, there was chatter again. A new threat. A man obsessed with killing the president. And Frank? He saw this as something more than duty. This was personal. This time, he wasn't going to let history repeat itself. It started with a voice. Late one night, in the dim glow of his apartment, Frank Horrigan sat with a drink in hand. Half bourbon, half memory. The TV played to no one. The city outside murmured like it always did. He was almost at peace with the noise in his head when the phone rang. He picked up with the disinterest of a man used to false alarms. But the voice on the other end was sharp, deliberate and calm in a way that chilled him instantly. You couldn't save him, Frank. You were right there, and you failed. Frank froze. But here's your second chance. I'm going to kill the president. And this time, maybe you'll do something. Click. The line went dead, but the pulse in Frank's neck didn't. It thudded like a war drum. Not fear, adrenaline, recognition. This wasn't a prank call. This was real. And whoever that voice belonged to, they knew things they shouldn't. About the Kennedy detail. About him. Within hours, Frank was back in the field. No questions asked. They'd tried retiring him once, but he'd stuck around like furniture no one wanted to throw out. Now, suddenly, he was front line again. Not because they believed in him, but because this caller had asked for him. By name. It wasn't just a threat, it was a challenge. And Frank wasn't sure if he was being hunted, tested, or offered a shot at redemption. The agency scrambled into high alert. Profiles were pulled, threat assessments run. But something told Frank this wasn't a man who wanted to be found. Not yet. He was playing a game. And Frank? He had no choice but to play along. He stared out over the city that night. Same skyline, same regret. But now, something was different. This time, the past had come back. Not to haunt him, but to force him to finally answer for it. The man on the phone called himself Booth. A sick joke, Frank thought, referencing John Wilkes Booth, Lincoln's assassin. But this guy wasn't just clever. He was precise, calculated. A former CIA operative, they guessed. Trained, off the grid, with a twisted sense of patriotism and an ego that demanded spectacle. Booth didn't just want to kill the president. He wanted to prove he was smarter than the entire U.S. government. And Frank? He was the one Booth had handpicked to witness it all. Every day, Booth called again. Different time, different number. Always calm. Always one step ahead. Frank tried tracing him, baiting him, provoking him. Nothing worked. Booth wasn't just threatening the president. He was dissecting Frank's life, piece by piece, exposing old scars and hammering at the cracks. Do you remember what it felt like, Frank? You saw the gun, but you didn't move fast enough. You could have taken the bullet. You didn't. Frank didn't respond to the bait, not out loud. But inside, it was working. The doubt he'd buried for decades was crawling back to the surface. He replayed that day in Dallas over and over. The open car, the crowds, the sound, the silence that followed. Now he was being asked to do it all again. The agency brought in young blood, clean suits, sharp reflexes, shiny optimism. They moved with certainty, eyes bright with confidence that their bulletproof plans would work. But Frank had lived long enough to know men like Booth don't play by the rules. They rewrite them. He started watching everything, everyone. Hands in pockets, shifting eyes, a cough in the wrong place. Paranoia was a survival instinct in his line of work, but this time it felt different. He wasn't just trying to protect a man. He was trying to outrun his own legacy. There was one moment, quiet, almost forgettable, that stayed with him. He was walking the perimeter during a campaign event, scanning rooftops, scanning faces, and he saw a little boy on someone's shoulders. The boy gave him a thumbs up. Frank nodded back. And in that tiny exchange, something inside him clicked. It wasn't about the president. It wasn't about glory. It was about all the people who were counting on that man to stay alive. All the families, all the kids, all the ordinary Americans who never saw the gun until it was too late. That's what Booth didn't get. This wasn't a chess match. This was real life. And Frank Horrigan wasn't ready to lose it again. The rally was chaos, dressed in red, white, and blue. Crowds packed, shoulder to shoulder, flags waving, cameras flashing, music blaring from massive speakers. The president was minutes away from stepping onto the stage, and Secret Service agents swarmed like bees, eyes darting, hands on earpieces, radios buzzing. Frank didn't hear any of it. His pulse thudded in his ears. His eyes scanned the crowd like a machine, not looking for a gun, looking for intent. Stillness in the wrong place. Eyes that weren't cheering. A shadow where there shouldn't be one. Booth had promised he'd make his move here, and Frank believed him. He'd told his team, given them every warning, but Booth was a ghost, the kind who lived in plain sight. Frank was on edge, nerves wound tight. Every instinct screamed, "This is it!" And then he saw him, upper deck, black coat in summer heat, standing too still, watching, not celebrating. Booth. Frank moved. He didn't ask, didn't radio. He ran. People shouted, knocked into him, hands pulling at his jacket. He shoved through. His knees ached, breath short, but he climbed the stairs 2 at a time. Booth didn't flinch. He was waiting, gun in hand, raised. Frank lunged. The shot cracked like lightning. But it wasn't the president who fell, it was Frank. Bullet tearing through him as he tackled Booth, slamming both of them to the ground. Pain ripped through his chest. Blood. Sirens. Screams. Booth tried to turn the gun again, but Frank didn't let him. He held on, using every last shred of strength in his body. Backup rushed in. Booth was dragged away, cuffed, eyes burning with rage that his moment had been stolen. Frank lay there, fading, breath shallow. "Did I get him?" he whispered. "Yeah," someone said. "You did." The world around him blurred, but in that moment, Frank felt something he hadn't in 30 years. Peace. He had stepped into the line of fire. This time, he didn't hesitate. This time, he was enough. Frank survived. Barely. Weeks in the hospital, ribs wired back together, a lung that would never fully work right again. But he lived, and so did the president. The news cycle moved fast. Hero agent saves the day. Headlines, medals, praise. But Frank didn't care about the spotlight. He wasn't in it for redemption anymore. What mattered was that he finally kept his promise to himself. He got a visit not long after from a young agent who'd been on the detail that day. "You didn't just stop a bullet," she said. "You reminded all of us why we wear the badge." Frank didn't respond. He just nodded. Because some truths don't need a speech. Here's the thing. In real life, most people don't face down assassins, but they do carry the weight of regret, the guilt of mistakes, the shame of not doing enough. Frank Horrigan's story hits because we all wish for that one moment, the chance to go back and do it right. Sometimes that second chance never comes, but when it does, you better be ready to take the hit. And as for Booth, he became a name in a file. Just another man who thought he could rewrite history with a gun. But he underestimated something no threat assessment could measure: the will of a man who had already lost once. And here's a fact. Secret Service agents are trained to sacrifice their lives to protect the president. That's not a figure of speech, it's policy. They rehearse for it, plan for it, accept it. The moment a threat appears, they're expected to shield with their bodies, without hesitation. But no amount of training can prepare you for guilt. Frank Horrigan wasn't just fighting a killer. He was fighting time, memory, and the version of himself that failed. And he won.